Hey guys, Great Scott Moments. And so I was talking with this gal, and she's a very passionate, intense girl. And she's like, and she like has her children right in line with everything that she does. And you know, part of it is like her daughter is a very much a free-spirited girl. And she doesn't get very much time to be a free spirit. And so I always feel for her, the poor gal. And yet, you know, both of their children toe the line, they're totally obedient. At least outwardly, and you know, their son, their younger son, definitely thrives on that, you know, structure and everything. But what I wanted to go through is we were talking, and she was like, "So do your kids ever become bored?" And I was like, "My son does. My daughter doesn't. My son is 9. And you know, he's a leader everywhere he goes. Leader in video games, leader in movie watching, a leader amongst his friends. He goes out in a social situation and he's like, "Hey man, how are you doing?" And just totally connecting with everyone. And everyone's like, "Whoa, who's this little 9-year-old guy?" And they start chatting with him, and he's great. And now as he's coming into martial arts, you know, he's improving. Like, he missed because he's been a little undisciplined and so extroverted that he's not had the discipline to remain, you know, in order during all of karate class. Therefore, he's missed his first belt testing, and so now he's learned his lesson from there, and he's a lot more obedient, and he's a lot more listening to direction. And so I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. But there's times when he's not getting a substantial increase of input into his life. Those times when it's before bed, or you know, we've got an hour before we have to go someplace and we're not going to put on a movie, and he's got to read a book or play with his toys, and he's like, "I'm so bored." And so my crazy intense friend was talking with me, and she's like, "You know, boredom it's only been a word for the last 150 years. The kids before that, they worked, and they did their studies, and they did their stuff, and like they never had time to be bored. And when they did have free time, they used their creativity in their mind to create something, to play in the fields, to, you know, draw, to write stories, and that was their creative outlet. There was never time for boredom." And she's like, you know, you go around through a lot of the cultures around the world, and they still don't have a word for boredom. You know, there's places in Africa where the closest they can get to boredom is "I'm tired." And it's totally different, you know, meaning in there. And so I'm wondering, like, yeah, the more connected we are with our devices and, you know, the Facebook and the internet and, you know, all the different social media outlets and that we like want to get in there with, which I'm kind of scared for when my son actually starts getting in there. But you know, all that is going to create a culture where when we get unplugged from the matrix, we're going to be completely unsatisfied with our lives. And that's a really scary thing, because all of our creativity has been sapped from us. And you know, I can't say that there's been a devious mind that's been back there pulling the strings to make sure that every kid is not creative. You know, there are and there aren't. But looking at the way things are, it saddens me. And you know, one thing about me is, you know, I grew up in my closet. Creative thinking was the only avenue of escape in reality. Both, actually, for me in my life. You know, I'd come home and I'd pretty much lived in a walk-in closet. And I entertained myself forever, till 18 years old, and moved out and bought my own little place and lived there alone. That's all I knew. And so I much prefer to be in my creative worlds than in this reality. And that's been a struggle that over the last 15 years, I've really come to grips with. And okay, like, this world. And now there's this internet world that I'm embracing and impacting people's lives in. And, but you know what? I've never really been bored. And so I got to look to my children and I've got to be like, okay, where do we fix this? And so, like, I was out shopping one day and my son was like, okay, I want this toy, I want this toy, I want this toy. And I was like, son, you never play with your toys. Okay, when you get home, you play video games, or you watch a movie, or you do something like that, some electronic, or you go outside and you play with your friends. You don't play with your toys. So absolutely no way am I ever going to buy you any more toys. And he thought about that, and he was really upset. But he took it inside. And being 9 now, he's starting to change. And he was 8 at the time. And ever since that talk that we had, he started to play with his toys. And he started to be creative in his mind and create battle scenes with the Legos that he has and all these different things. And I'm like thriving in it. I'm like, yes, I want you to play with your toys, because that means the creative thinking, creative juices are going, and you're going to be a whole person. And that if once you disconnect from the matrix, or should something happen and there goes the internet, neutron bombs and all electronics are gone, you're not going to be totally displaced. There's going to be still some of you able to function in the real world, which I think a lot of people would really, really hate their lives if they took out electricity. So anyways, I think I'm running way too long here, but I hope this gave you a little food for thought, and God bless you guys. All right, bye-bye.